So there are so many things that we can say about site plans, and it seems like it's the area that creates the most headaches. So I'd just like to go over some things that might help you to make sense of it. So every view has a project base point and a survey base point. So if we go to the east elevation, you'll see that the survey point and the project point are not visible. They are actually hidden, so you could come down to reveal the hidden elements. There they are there. I'll just click on this light bulb icon again because I'd rather type in VG, and under visibility graphics you can go to site and click on the little plus sign there next to site, and there is the project base point and the survey point. So let's go ahead and put a check mark in those two and we'll pick OK. Now you'll notice that level 1 is 0, and if you click on this you'll see that there's a project base point that's 0, and here's that true north angle if you need to change it. But if you tab and click, you'll find the survey point. When working in an office, sometimes the civil engineer will have their own survey point, and then the project is placed based on the project point and that coordination between the 2 points. Sometimes they're the same point, but most of the time on the larger projects that I've worked with, the survey point is way over on the site someplace, and the project point is based on the corner of a building or at the intersection of 2 grid lines. We sometimes start our level 1 at 100 feet. And even if you do change all of these settings that we're going to be changing, if you start to place the site topography at a higher level, like 97 feet or 100 feet, it's going to be drawn higher than these levels. I think the biggest headaches that you might experience is if you start to move the building to the site. That's probably not a good idea because then all of the settings for the building need to change for the elevations of the site. And it's done different ways. If you select the project base point and change the elevation, the whole project will shift. If you unpin it and you change the elevation, then only the project base point will change. So I could change this to a negative 100 feet, and because this level is reading it, it will show as a number based on that project base point elevation. But I'm going to leave that locked, and instead I'm going to keep the project base point at 0, which is our project, and we'd like to keep it at 0. And then if I tab and click and find the survey point, what I'd like to do with the survey point is move it. So instead of unpinning it and changing this number, we're going to physically move the survey point. So I'll select the survey point, click move, pick here on this level as my base point, pull your mouse down and type in 100 for 100 feet. The survey point is 100 feet below the project base point. If I select this level and pick edit type, I can then change the level so that instead of reading the project base point, it's going to read the survey point. And that way I maintain a project base point of 0, but the levels change to that 100 feet that we might want to use. That way when we start to draw our building elements, we will have everything on that 0 project base point. So now let's take a look at the site plan and bring in some topography. We'll go to the site view. This is the only view that shows the project and survey points by default. So there are several different ways of creating topography. You can create topography from a CAD file, or you can insert an image. In the Insert tab, let's go to Image, and you can use the image that I posted on Blackboard, the site analysis that I use in other on-campus classes to graphically show a site analysis. Over in the Massing and Site tab, we can pick on Property Line and create a sketch. Instead of entering the distance and the bearings or the angles, we're going to create it by sketching. So I'm going to go ahead and click on this top left corner of the property line, pull my mouse over and type in 200 for 200 feet and enter. We can pull our mouse down now and type in 200, and over to the left type in 200, and then we'll come back to the beginning here and click. We can go ahead and pick the green check mark. You'll see that there's a phantom line here at the bottom. And now we're ready to create these setbacks. Every site has setbacks that are established from the city. I'm not going to go through this whole project, but just to showing you the setbacks, instead of using an offset for the property lines, we can go to the Annotate tab and click Detail Line. And then under Detail Line, we want to change our line style to Hidden Lines and change the offset based on that setback. So the setback along this Blosser Street is 50 feet, so I'll go ahead and type in 50. And then here I'm going to pick lines instead of drawing a line. So I'll go ahead and get close to this property line, and I'll see the dash line. I can go ahead and click. And then along Front Avenue here, I'm going to change this to 30 and for 30 feet for the offset. Go close to the property line on the right side and click, and then I'll change it again to 20 feet for the 2 side yards. Here I'll click at the top line, property line, and here on the left side. So now I'll have my site setbacks, and in the Massing and Site tab, I'm going to go ahead and click on Topography and change here my elevation to 98. I'll start with this 98 that comes through the site. By placing points, I can start here and start to kind of click on my contour line that's really based on the image. And well, as you're doing this, you don't have to be exact. And because there's no edge over here, it's okay on this side because all of these end on this side. So I'll go all the way straight down and click and start to curve around this 98 contour. It won't curve yet until we get the 97 in, but because this is continuous ground and actually would curve possibly around here, I'm going to go a little bit further. And now I'll pick the green check mark. I know I'm not done, but if I pick the green check mark, you'll see that the site topography covers the image. So I'm going to select the topography, right click, and go to Override Graphics in View and pick by elements so that I can pick in front of your surface transparency and change the transparency slightly so that I can see through the topography to the image that I'm working with. It's important that you don't go back to TopoSurface to add to this topography because you'll be basically creating another separate layer of land. So instead, let's click on the one that we've been working with here for the 98 feet and pick Edit Surface. Now we can pick Place Points and change our number to 97 so that we can continue here down this slope. I'm going to pause the video so that you can place the 96, 95, 94, 93. So I just changed the numbers and then clicked along that line And now if I wanted to go down to this corner, I can type in 92 and just go ahead and click on that corner. It'll bring it right down to a lower elevation here. Now I can change the elevation to 99, and as I said before, it would be here off the paper or off the property line. So I'm just going to bring it a little bit further, because later on I can use a section box to crop it if I need to. I'll come straight down on this side. It makes a little bit of a difference in this empty area here for that 99-foot elevation, because we want to bring it out away and curve it to kind of end it instead of bringing it straight. And 100. The more points that you place, the cleaner the transition. If you don't have enough points, you'll get a lot of straight lines. And so you can place as many points as you need to curve that land around here, the contour. Notice here if I place more points going back, it will start to curve a little bit closer to that line. And then the last one here is 101. And there are times when you may have to go back and just place a point like this corner that didn't get any site on it. If I change my elevation to 97 and then click on the corner, it'll kind of bring the land back. Let's go ahead and pick the green check mark. You'll notice that I have an extra line in here, and that is partly because underneath here, the panel that has topo surface in it, you can click on the small little arrow to get to the site settings. And right now the lines are set up in increments of 1 foot for the secondary contours. So if I change that to, let's say, 6 inches and I pick apply, you see how more contours are going to be placed. So this is how you might set up your topography so that the main contour lines are every 5 feet, but the secondary contours are at 1 foot. And also, just to let you know, in case you didn't see this part, in this dialog box under site settings, the section cut material can be changed here, and that would be if you create a section or the section box that we've covered already. If you want the side profile to be something other than earth, maybe you want it to be black or a different color, you can change it here. So I'll go ahead and pick OK. This is only straight because I created a straight line here. If I wanted to change that, like I did over here, I could go back to Edit Surface and kind of pull these out a little bit more so that I can get a curve. Or I can go back into the site settings and change this back to 1 foot. So changing the secondary contours back to 1 foot will give me the exact lines that are on this contour, and I just use this right edge to kind of pull out and make that more curved. I can also select the topography, pick Edit Surface, and place points so that I can place a point at this corner down here. Maybe I'll make that 97, and if I click here, then I've got topography covering the entire site. Pick the green check mark. And now if we go to Site Component, we can start to place trees. I'll use this Scarlet Oak 42-foot diameter, which seems to fit in this site plan. So now everything looks great until we go to the east elevation and find out that our grade is up above our project base point. And this happens so often. Now you have to make a choice. To continue with the project and not have too many headaches, I would recommend that you select the site and then move it down 100 feet. So I selected it, I picked the move icon. I'm going to click a point, pull my mouse down and type in 100 and enter. So now the site plan itself is down at the 0 project level, but the building elements will come into place a little bit better for you. If you go to the site plan here and you go to massing and site and pick on these labels so that you can label the contours, and I'll just click a point here and pull my mouse up across the contours, you'll see that the numbers are based on that project base point. So what we need to do is select those numbers, and like we did our elevation marker, we can pick edit type and change the elevation base from the project base point to the survey point. If we do that and pick apply, you'll see that the numbers will change and you'll have the labels on your site plan with the appropriate numbers. But now if you're going to add any more points, you'll need to think about how these numbers work in relation to 100. Let's go to the 3D view and see that if I select my surface and pick edit surface, and if you just click on one of these small little dots, you'll see that this one is a -3 feet. So now when you add, or if you add more to your site plan, you're thinking about its relationship to that 100-foot project base point. You can also, when you pick place points, change the setting here to relative to surface. If you change it relative to surface, then you're not adding more contours, you're adding more points that are going to be relative to that surface that you're working with, instead of establishing an actual elevation. So I'll go ahead and pick the green check mark. So now let's take a look at creating a graded region. We go back to the site plan and then select the image file, right click and go to hide and view elements. And now in order for us to see the existing underneath the new and to be able to establish the cut and fill of the site, we're going to create a graded region. So let's go ahead and pick graded region, and then the choice here is to create a new topo surface exactly like the existing one. So I'll go ahead and pick that. Select the topography, and you'll get a warning that says that they're being created in the same phase. We're going to talk about phases in a few minutes. So I'm going to go ahead and pick the green check mark. So now you basically have two different surfaces, the new on the top and the existing here on the bottom. I'm going to go ahead and do an undo so that you can actually see that. So now if you select the surface and edit it, and you start to use these points to edit the surface, when you add ground, it's not going to show you what's existing because it's adding ground to it. But if you subtract the ground, so let's say we want to cut some of the ground here, you'll actually see the hidden line that shows where the grade is pulled back. And you want to make sure that these points are kind of evenly distributed, because they can be hard to work with if you have less of them. You start to see these straight lines as opposed to curved lines, and they do start to create odd, unexpected shapes. So you may have to select and edit the surface. You can use relative to surface and leave that at 0. And then when you place points, you're placing them relative to the surface that you're close to or on. See how that changed that? So that might be a little bit easier to kind of work with. Revit has not mastered the contour lines quite yet. So I picked the green check mark, and what I want to show you here is that I can see the dashed line that represents where I'm cutting the surface back, but I can't see the dashed line that represents how much I'm filling over. So I can click on this topography, right click, go to override graphics in view by element, and change the transparency a little bit. If I change the transparency of the top view and pick apply, so you can start to see a little bit of that hidden line that represents how much ground you're adding if you need to see that. So when we're ready to create a floor, we can go to the architecture tab and pick floor, and then creating just a small rectangular boundary. I'll go ahead and create a small floor here. The reason I'm doing this is to show you that in the Annotate tab, when we use spot elevations or spot coordinates, the default is going to be to use the project base point. If we want to change that, we can select that spot elevation, pick Edit Type, and change here in the type properties the origin, elevation origin, from project base point to survey point. When we do that now, we have that 100-foot mark that we changed the level to. And the last thing that we'll do in this module is take a look at how to create a schedule showing the cut and the fill for this project. We can go to the View tab and pick Schedules and Schedule Quantities. And then in this category list, we'll go ahead and pick Topography and pick OK. And now we're adding the fields. Now earlier in a module we looked at calculated values and adding parameters. In this one we'll just do a quick cut and fill calculation. So we're just going to that Revit automatically will show us. So let's pick up the name and pick add, and then the cut and pick add, and the fill and pick add. And now maybe a couple other things like the net cut and fill, or the surface area. Maybe the surface area, go ahead and pick add and pick OK. There are other things that we can put in the schedule, but see how it automatically will give you the cut and the fill for this project in the surface area. Now the name, I have to actually name that element so that it can register a name here for that topography. So back in the site plan, we can select this new topography and change over here in the properties the name of it to new topo or topography, new topography. And then when you click in space, and then when you put your pointer close to the topography, use the tab key once and then click. And you'll see that this is the other one because the other one was called new. So this one will be the existing topography. And now if we go back to our schedule, you'll see that you have here the names of those two topographies. We did say that even after you create a view for your schedule, you can come into these other properties and change things like editing the format. So here, let's pick on the formatting, edit, and for the cut and the fill, you can hold your Control key down to select all three of the cut, fill, and surface areas. You can change the alignment to center, and if you change the alignment to center, then all the numbers will change in center in that column. And you can even go back to the fields and look at other fields that you might want to add to the schedule. Going back to the site plan, we should select here the topography and make sure that, talking about phases, that the new one is under the new construction. And then I'll click in space and go close to the topography tab and then click so that you can get to the existing topography, which should be under the phase created existing. So here I'm going to change the phase to existing and pick apply. In the Manage tab under Phases, you'll see that you have these graphic overrides. So you have the project phases, existing and new, and you can have so many other ones. And then you have the phase filters. So that's what you want to see in that view. And then the graphic override. We looked at using phasing for rendering purposes by creating an abstract phase. So take a look at what we did for rendering purposes when we were able to change here the graphic overrides for that specific element to have its own material within a project phase. Going back to the Architecture tab, if we want to tag our property line, we're going to need to go to Insert and load the family under Annotations. So go to Insert, Load Family, Annotations, Civil, and then in the Civil folder, we have these different property line tags. We'll just pick here the property line tag family file. Now it's loaded so that when we go to annotate, we can either tag by category or tag all of that category, either one. What I like to do is pick tag all and then highlight here property line segment tags. Maybe degree, minutes, seconds. I'm going to go ahead and pick apply and pick OK, and you'll see that you have the tag on your property lines. We also talked about in an earlier video, in the Masking and Site tab, the split surface and subregions. When you split a surface, it actually splits the whole site all the way through, and you can merge them later on, but it can be a good tool if you wanted to see other graphics or something unique is happening on the project itself. And then subregions are really if you wanted to place a walkway or a parking lot, and we do have parking components here that we can use also. So this kind of gives you the tools that you can use for your site plans. It looks like these two things fit on a 24 by 36 inch sheet of paper, which is the D size. So you can highlight sheets, right click and pick new sheets, and then pick the load button and scroll down to title blocks, and let's use the D size 24 by 36, and then you can bring your site plan over, rename your view so that it's site plan, and bring your schedule in. Please keep in touch with me if you work with the site plan and you have any questions, or if you've discovered a different way of working with your specific site plan. Let me know if I can help you in any way.